That is feline devotion right there. Do stay with us on BBC News throughout the day, whether you're watching on the BBC News channel in the UK or on BBC World, to keep you right up to date with all the key stories. You're watching BBC News.
You're live with Lucy Hockings on BBC World News. After months of campaigning, voting day dawns in the US midterm elections and polls are opening. President Biden makes a final push for support with Donald Trump also on the campaign trail.
The election was rigged and stolen, and now our country is being destroyed.
We know in our bones that our democracy is at risk, and we know that this is your moment to defend it.
Tensions emerge at the COP27 climate change summit over plans by several African countries to extract more natural gas. More than 50 raids carried out in South Korea as part of an investigation into the deadly Halloween crush. And authorities in Germany are trying to find out why an 8-year-old girl spent most of her life locked away at her grandparents' house. In the next half hour, we'll be live in Egypt, Berlin and Turin, and we'll hear from our correspondents in Seoul and Kyiv. Polls are opening for in-person voting in the US midterm election. With some 42 million ballots already in through the early voting system, this is being called one of the most important midterms in history. At stake is the control of both houses of Congress. We start our coverage with this report from our North America correspondent, Nomia Iqbal.
Tim Allman, BBC News.
Let's just bring you the latest pictures, the live pictures that we have on our top story, which is that the polls have opened in some places in the US, on the East Coast, of course. This is New York. We're very early in the morning there. As you can see, there are people showing up to vote in the midterm elections. A story we'll be closely following for you throughout the day here on BBC World News.
The Travel Show, your essential guide wherever you're heading, every weekend on BBC World News.
You're live with Lucy Hockings on BBC World News. After months of campaigning, voting day dawns. Polls are opening in parts of America for the US midterm elections. These are live pictures from Cleveland, Ohio, with a steady stream of people casting their votes. President Biden has made a final push for support ahead of the vote, with Donald Trump also on the campaign trail. Tensions emerge at the COP27 climate change summit over plans by several African countries to extract more natural gas. More than 50 raids carried out in South Korea as part of an investigation into the deadly Halloween crush. And authorities in Germany are trying to find out why an 8-year-old girl spent most of her life locked away at her grandparents' house. In the next half hour, we'll be live in Fairfax and Atlanta, and we'll hear from our correspondents in Seoul, Kyiv and Berlin. Polling stations across the United States are beginning to open for the high-stakes midterm elections, a vote which will shape American politics for the next 2 years. Turnout is expected to be high after a frantic campaign, and for a good reason, because all of the seats in the House of Representatives are up for grabs, alongside 1/3 of the Senate. The Democratic Party has held a narrow majority in both chambers for the past 2 years. This could all change with the midterms, making it more difficult for President Biden to pass the laws he wants. Several major states also have elections for their governor and for local officials. Voting, though, already underway in the East Coast. We have these live pictures coming to us from Cleveland in Ohio. Some 43 million US residents have already voted, either via post or getting to the booths early. But the majority of people will go down today to their local school or wherever the polling station is to cast their ballots. So let's take you live to Fairfax in Virginia and join our North America correspondent Barbara Plett-Usher. How's turnout there so far, Barbara? Certainly going to be an interesting election to follow, and we are across it here on BBC World News. Ben, thank you so much. Let's just show you these pictures we're getting out of Australia. Australia and New Zealand being treated to this, a total lunar eclipse. These were taken in Sydney, these pictures. This is when the moon travels through the Earth's shadow. In a total eclipse, the moon becomes fully immersed and can actually take on a reddish glow. But this is quite rare, and the next one won't happen until 2025, the total lunar eclipse. It's a beautiful sight. See you in a few minutes. You're live with Lucy Hockings on BBC World News. After months of campaigning, voting day dawns. Polls are opening in the US midterm elections. These are live pictures from Cleveland, Ohio. You can see a steady stream of people casting their votes. President Biden has made a final push ahead of the vote. Donald Trump also on the campaign trail. Tensions at the COP27 summit over ways to compensate poorer countries affected by climate change. We report from Pakistan as it recovers from devastating floods. We'll also take you to East Africa, where there's no end in sight to a devastating drought there. Farmers in the region say they are desperate. Thousands of animals have died due to lack of food. In the next half hour, we'll be live in Washington, Tampa, Florida, and the Amboseli National Park in Kenya. Americans are voting in midterm elections in which the Republicans are vying for a majority in both houses, something which would paralyse President Biden's agenda for his remaining 2 years in office. Still very early in the morning in the US, but with the stakes so high, they are expecting turnout to be exceptional. We can see a live shot here of a polling station in Cleveland in Ohio, but we've already seen 43 million US residents who have voted either by post or getting to the booths early. However, it is today that the majority of people will show up to cast their ballots. Let's take you live to Washington and join Julia Manchester, who is a reporter with the US politics website The Hill. I'm going to start with a big one for you, Julia, for our audiences around the world. Why do these midterm elections matter so much?
Announcement is, I have no insight, but you could only imagine and speculate.
Everyone is speculating indeed. Christian, thanks for joining us with that from Tampa. More on the elections throughout the day. Good to have you with us. Bye-bye.
Life everywhere is